Good afternoon. I'm Diane O'Connell, the chair of the international section for the New York State Bar. And we're here with what we're hoping is going to be a regular series of webinars that the intention is to be slightly casual, but to provide information that's going to help to give us hope and ease our minds and to make us feel like we're a little bit more together, even though we're social distancing. So today's program, we're talking about how will your career path change after COVID-19. And we've brought in Sunil Arora, who's a leadership and career coach who focuses on developing leadership and startup businesses. And along with us, we have our regular guests, which are DL Morris and Ulrich Fobian. And I'm going to hand it over to them. So I hope you enjoy. And we're going to banter a bit back and forth. So if you want to participate, hit the button for a chat, ask a question. I'm going to monitor the questions. So as we go through the program, we can interject and ask some of the questions that you have burning in your brains. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Diane. It's a pleasure to be here. Certainly fun to connect with Ulrich and you and meet Sunil as well in these last couple of weeks as we all continue this experience of reimagining normal. And as we kind of discussed a couple of weeks ago, we are assessing how coronavirus or last week or 2 weeks ago, coronavirus executive orders in New York, Illinois, and South Africa have really made an impact on everyday life. And we talked about the importance of reimagining normal and how we celebrate birthdays or utilize social media apps to really further relationship building as we reflect on what silver linings we can to give us hope during this experience. Ulrich?
Okay, I think you can hear me now. And we're so happy to be here. So thank you again to you, DL, and also to Diane. It's wonderful to be here again. So as we get to a place where we start to see countries and states open up again, little by little, or some on a greater level, we need to start reimagining what is normal. Is there a new normal? Are we going back to the old normal? What does that mean in terms of regulations? What does that mean in terms of managing myself, my business, various partners, also family life? So that's what we're really interested in, and that is different in different countries and different states at the moment. So I think what we're going to do now is DL will start with going over some of the states and what's happening there, how they're starting to reopen, just very briefly in a few minutes, and I'll do the same with South Africa. And because we touched on Japan as well 2 weeks ago, I will also just mention Japan, and then we'll hand over to Sunil.
Yeah, just to set the background or stage, if you will, certainly in the United States, as time continues to change rapidly, every day you hear new regulations or new headlines on what states are being opened and what states continue to remain closed, certainly here. So looking at the map, you know, it's a wide variance. You've got a lot of partial reopenings, some states that are reopening soon that we're all eager for, and several states that there remains very strict shutdowns. Colorado was closed just from March 26th through April 26th, but now they're opening up with curbside pickups at certain restaurants, and personal care businesses are reopening. Florida, you've probably heard on some of the news headlines of the beaches that have opened, and oh, how I wish I was in Florida right now. Georgia was one of the first to reopen, states to reopen with recreational gyms. How many of us miss being able to get into an actual gym and run on a treadmill or do a spin class?
Hey, DL, I'm just going to stop you there and say, at least you can still run around the block, buddy, and you have been able to.
I know Sundays have become my Sunday run day. And from our conversation a couple of weeks ago in comparison to South Africa, where you can't go outside, that's correct, right?
That's right.
You still don't have the recreational activities allowed.
No, we do. We have some updates, but I'll let you finish with yours first. I was just giving you a bit of a rant anyway.
Okay, I love it. So just briefly, Illinois, of course, is still closed. That state has actually been extended through May 30th. New Jersey continues to remain closed, and New York, where we all are, has continued to be closed since March 22nd, although the Governor Cuomo is discussing a phased reopening beginning possibly May 15th, as he understands that we're all kind of teetering on the balance of that sanity equation, as he put it in a news conference the other day.
Yeah, I'm going to add in that I spoke with some friends down in Nashville yesterday, and they live in a county outside of Nashville that there's only 5,000 people in the county, and their closest neighbor is a quarter of a mile away. They live on a farm, and they were explaining to me what life was like in Kentucky and Tennessee, because they have family in Kentucky as well, and they were like, yeah, we're just putting on our masks and, you know, doing our thing. You know, it's easy to social distance here, but now what's happening in the news is that the cities like Chicago and New York are starting to lower the curve. But if you start looking at the rural areas, the curve is starting to go up. So, you know, even though some of these places are reopening, the perspective is much different from the city standpoint than it is from the rural standpoint. And I can understand why some of the folks in the rural areas are like, hey, you know, there's nobody near us, let us out, you know. And that makes sense. But, you know, as we're now seeing, the curve is starting to sharpen there. And then, you know, what happens? Does it just keep ricocheting back and forth? So I just figured I'd give that perspective.
Very good. Diane, I like that you talk about now the curve is starting to spike or rise. And in South Africa, as you can see, when we spoke 2 weeks ago, 22nd of April, about there, we had 3,465 cases, and we really only started somewhere in March with really being introduced as a country to coronavirus, and now it's gone up 2 weeks later to 7,572. That's a lot less than America, I know, but it's still quite a lot for us, and quite let's not do too many comparisons right now on that, but I mean, it's still quite a big increase for us in these 2 weeks, and from 58 deaths 2 weeks ago to 148 deaths. So at this stage, we're climbing. We have been in a lockdown for quite a while now, and we've started to move from, we had these 5 levels of reintroduction into normal society, and Sunil's going to explain to us that nothing will be normal again, I'm sure, but trying to get back to whatever normal is going to be. And so level 5 is like a complete lockdown, and yes, no running, DL, and no alcohol, no cigarettes. And then last week, Friday, we started with level 4, and there were some interesting things in there. I'm not going to go over everything, but what was going to happen was cigarettes, not alcohol, but cigarettes would be allowed. And so the smokers were extremely happy. One day before, they decided to change that, and so no cigarettes were actually allowed. So there was a bit of an uproar in level 4, and has been, although I have seen some smokers around still enjoying, so I think some people planned really well. And then running is now allowed, or exercising is allowed within I think it's a 5 kilometer radius, and also only between 6 and 9 in the morning. So,
and Ulrich, be honest, were you running avidly every day before the lockdown? I'm just curious.
I had a bit of like a spinning bike thing here, and it was an old one, and I shot off a few of the bolts. So it has been used. I almost died a few times, but I've seemed to keep it together. But I'm very glad to be back on the streets now and enjoying the roads. It's quite crazy. I don't know if you've had this, any of you where you stay, but because we had this complete lockdown and now we're allowed to go out, the streets are just, there's just a lot of life in the mornings. There's people with their prams and their children and the dogs and everybody's friends, waving to it's hard to run 5Ks because you're kind of waving all the time to each person that you go past. So that's been wonderful, although it's still a very serious and strange time. So some lawyers, the law firm I work with here has opened up offices in the sense where they're going, checking some things in their files, but obviously no clients are allowed to come and things like that.
Ulrich, I want to know if you're smoking cigarettes while you're running.
Well, I don't smoke, but so the answer to that is no. Just some interesting things that people watching can go Google later, that I just found interesting that's being spoken about here in the country, and I'll end with this so we can give most of the time to Sunil. But there's a famous DJ by the name of Gareth Cliff. And he wrote an open statement to the president, and he speaks about how he's really wanting the economy to open up again, and this severe lockdown is causing more damage than it's causing good. And it's written in what can be perceived as quite a threatening tone, and it's not been taken very well. But it has sparked a lot of violent debate on both sides, protecting the very poor versus what has also become a bit of a racial debate. He's a white person in his, what some would say, in his sort of protected rich environment, and just wanting the economy to open. But if anybody wants to Google it, it's quite easy to find Gareth Cliff's recent statement, and it might make for some interesting reading and comments. You might have some interesting comments. And then in the New York Times, I saw an epidemiologist by the name of Neil Ferguson, who is very involved with social distancing in the UK. He resigned from his post because he was seen or somehow caught with his lover recently breaking those laws. And so what's just interesting is that in South Africa, we've got a big, we're very sensitive regarding race, and comments regarding race, anything you may say can and probably will be seen in a very negative light, and you could lose your job. And it seems like breaking these laws, coronavirus laws, I'm not talking about South Africa, but I'm comparing it to that example, that this is something that could, for a stage, be seen as that. And if you are in a senior position or lawyers and you're breaking these laws, and it becomes public, what happens to your position at work and so on. So that's kind of what has been going through my mind. And I'll stop there. I've got more to say, but I don't want to take away from the actual topic today. So that's just an overview of what's happening now in South Africa.
A great summary, and I appreciate a little bit of the tangent. I mean, there's certainly been some headlines on the state side. I'm thinking of Chicago more recently over the weekend of 1,000-person house parties, and Mayor Lightfoot coming out and having very strong words for folks in the community to say, if you're doing these things, if you're caught, we will have to take action, police action, if necessary as well. Just given this significance of the threat of life that we certainly have been seeing. But Sunil, we're here to talk about what do we do as we are eager to see some at least phased reopenings and consider where our career paths will take us in this reimagined normality. So we'll turn it over to you, Sunil. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, DL, and thanks to everyone here for having me today. Thrilled to be joining you all for this important connection and gathering from a colleague and association standpoint. I think it's wonderful that you guys all come together to support each other in this weird, unsettling, and uncertain time. My name is Sunil Arora, as you guys have heard. I am coming to you today from downtown New York City, where I'm based here with my wife and our two very young sons. Very fortunate to be healthy and hunkered down, and just taking it day by day as we all are here. What I do in terms of my work that's very relevant to the topic today is I run a coaching business working with three categories of people. I work with CEOs, founders, senior executives within companies on a range of executive and management leadership issues. I work with individuals who are approaching or in a big life transition. And then I work with small business owners and early stage entrepreneurs to help them chart their path forward. A lot of coaches come to the work from a background in learning and development or organizational psychology or human resources. I have what I lovingly refer to as a wonderful weird background for this, in terms of a combination of industry, policy, and a lot of different hats I've worn in my career. So I started my career in the finance world. I was there for a decade plus. And then I was in the economic policy and international finance world for a period of time before working for a variety of startups in various sales, strategy, and operational roles. And what that does for me, and what you'll hopefully hear today and what I share with you all, is allows me to marry the spiritual, the inner exploration with the tangible, which I think is really important from a standpoint of coaching being helpful and actionable for people. And I love to hang out at 30,000 feet with people and explore the broader whys and what makes you work the way you do or think the way you do, and come down to 1,000 feet to say, okay, what do you want to do about that? Or how do you want to shift accordingly? So as I think about this question of how do our career paths change and how do things look like from a professional standpoint going forward, the predominant word that comes to my mind is change, right? And appreciating that we're going to just see a ton of it, and we're going to have to figure out how to manage it. If I'm honest, despite the heavy amount of work I do on myself with my meditation practice and my journaling and all the protocols I have in place, the thing that brings a lot of nervous energy to me in an instant is thinking a lot about the future. What's going to look like? What will my business evolve to? Who might I be working with? How will that affect things commercially, et cetera, right? So the change is going to affect all of us. And what I want to talk about today are 3 things that I think can help you manage that change, to accept it as, okay, it's going to be part of the future path. Now, how can I prepare for it, be ready for it so that it doesn't take me down a rabbit hole of nervous energy or anxiety around it. The nature of my work is very collaborative and interactive. So I'm going to encourage all of you to interject in real time on something that doesn't resonate, that you think is great in theory but difficult in practice, or just something else you have to add to the conversation. I'd love to hear from all of you and the perspectives you have. And I'll have a pause at the end of each of the 3 modules I want to present to gather that if we don't get them in real time, as well as wanting to push you all to do some practices to get you in the mode of thinking about this a little bit more. So I'll encourage you to do that in your own space and think about some of the things I highlight, and then take it from here when you are sitting with some of these thoughts and takeaways from our session today. So with that, I'll dive in and just outline to start the 3 things I want to cover to help us all think about how we're navigating the path forward and dealing with change. The first thing is in managing ourselves, right? And there's different components of that I'll get into. The second is in this broad topic, but especially important right now, of communication. And the third is what I refer to as designing the re-entry. Right? Whatever we're going back into, whatever we're going to find ourselves in terms of the new reality, being more proactive and thoughtful around what you want to design around that. So managing the self, communication, and designing the reentry. That's what we'll cover today. To kick off, we'll get right to some interactive exercises. I want to push everyone to spend 30 seconds jotting down to themselves the top 3 or 4 most important people in your life. Don't worry about ranking them, just the names that come to mind when you think about, okay, here are the most important people in my life. I'm gonna give you guys all about 30 seconds to do that right now.
And if you want to jot it down and send it in the chat, feel free to do that. If you want to keep it personal, that's okay as well.
Love that.
We were going to share it because I don't know if I get in trouble with the first names that just popped up in my head.
I appreciate that.
The wife was one of them.
We'll leave it up to the group. You guys can share if you'd like, but you can keep it to yourself as well.
DL, I hope I made your list.
None of you made my list at all. I just want to say that right now.
Shocking.
Awesome.
You're in the second tier.
So thank you, Diane, for sharing your list. I will put the other panelists here on the spot, and DL and Ulrich, and just ask you guys, where were each of you on your own lists?
I wasn't on my list.
I'm gonna edit in like 2 seconds, but no.
No. You see, you have to watch him. You have to watch him. He does this sort of thing. Yeah.
Right. So, and I would encourage all of you to think about the same question. Right. When I did this exercise years ago, I looked at the person I was doing it with and had a look of confusion. What do you mean? Where am I? Do I belong on that list? Oh, wait. Yes. I absolutely belong on that list, right? So it is, I could have gone to probably 15, 20 people on my list before I would even conceive of putting myself on. But it's a really simple and powerful reminder of where the self needs to be in all of this. We've all flown a lot in our lives, maybe less so going forward, but on the many flights we've taken, what is the rule that's given around what to do in the case of a drop in cabin pressure, right? Whose oxygen mask do we have to put on first?
Ourselves.
Ourselves.
First us.
That's right. This is the oxygen mask rule. We got to take care of ourselves before we can think about taking care of our family and our friends and our business and our professional lives. So it's a reorientation, I think, that is especially important coming out of this time when, again, we're going to be battling change and a lot of different economic and professional headwinds, to say, okay, what am I doing to manage myself? And let me appreciate that I need to be taking care of myself and prioritizing myself in order to do the things I want to do for my friends and family and then my business, right? So it's the big shift to start to say, I need to be there somewhere in my top 3 and top 5 of most important people in my life to facilitate what I want to do for everyone else. Now, the next step we get there to think about, again, and here's the tangible focus I bring into my work is, what does that mean? What does it mean to prioritize myself, to take care of myself? This idea has become fairly prominent over the last 5 to 7 years. And in a lot of ways, understandably, it's regarded with some skepticism as some woo-woo, self-care, kindness to self. What does that even mean? Does that have a role in me needing to get this brief done or get back to my boss or manage through my slog of email? And what I like to help people think about is their protocols, right? What are your protocols that you need from a self-care standpoint? So let's take it out of the theoretical or conceptual and say, I know I need these things for myself. And to help you a little bit, if this is still a little vague, you can break this down into 3 different categories, right? There's your mental protocols. These are the things you need to do to focus your energy. There's your physical protocols. Here's what I need to do to replenish and maintain my energy. And then there might be your emotional protocols. Here are the things I need to do to ensure I have high quality energy, right? So in the physical context, it's the things we refer to related to sleep, exercise, diet, whatever it is that we all know we need to take care of our bodies. On the mental side, this could be the meditation, the journaling, the reading, the yoga, the walk outside, the smoking while you're running, right? No judgment here, Ulrich. Right? Whatever it is from the standpoint of, hey, this is what I need to do to clear my mind, right? And then from the emotional side, it's, hey, I need to be connecting with these most important people in my life on a regular basis right now. Right? I need to be having conversations with my partner or my family member or my friend because that really gives me what I need to navigate this period. So those are the things to think about, just again, as some subcategories to help you out. I'll kick it off with maybe an example to help you guys before we do another little exercise around this. I've had these in place for myself for a while, just given work on myself and the work I do. But as this period started 2 months ago, I was out of sorts this mid to late March, as I think a lot of people were, and I realized I had to revisit my protocols and say, okay, what needs to shift or what needs to be added given what's going on? And one of the things I added to my list from a mental protocol standpoint is I have a pretty strict news and Twitter diet from 8:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. every day. As in, I do not check the news, I do not go on Twitter, I cut myself off from all of that during my workday because it's what I need to focus my energy for my clients. And I found myself going down some really unhelpful rabbit holes where I was watching press conferences from elected officials and thinking about XYZ in the markets or, what ABC study had just come out, and it just wasn't healthy for me, right? I am a pretty intense policy and current event nerd. So you can be sure between 5:30 and 8:30 every morning and between, 6:30 and 10 p.m. at night, I am digging into all the sources and finding out what's going on in the world and where are we. But my protocol was that, to say, okay, here's what I need to do right now, and here's what helps me. So I share that just as an example to help you think about, what it is for yourself. But I want to push you guys all to maybe take a little bit longer this time. I'm going to give you maybe 2 minutes to just write down 3 protocols, and don't worry about what category they fall into. Just 3 things that you know you need to take care of yourself. So I will turn it over to you all to do that, and then encourage you to share at least one of them at the end.
And I guess this is all in real time, kind of like where we are right now in terms of what are the habits that we're putting into place that are helping us continue to process and, if you will, cope in a healthy sense, right?
That's right. They're especially needed right now, but these are things you can rely on in any environment or time frame just to be healthy and taking care of yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind going first. I was hoping at some point in this presentation you would tell me just how much in yoga or meditation time works to make me feel amazing and no longer stressed or anxious about the nature of the times.
Oh, come on, DL, you're amazing all the time anyway, so you don't need. Yeah.
You're being too generous. But I appreciate kind of how you broke down the time of your day, because I do something similarly. I mean, there's a portion in my day I like to begin just with a meditation, opening up, the Bible and reading some passage that I might focus on for a little while, and journaling is a part of that practice, if you will. There's another part of the day at the end where I started a 30-day yoga journey in April. I finished it, and I just started another kind of 30-day practice just to kind of like put a capstone on the night, every night before I then watch TV or do what you do. I probably don't jump back into the news, because that's the whole point of trying to get in that Zen, is to not get yourself all riled up. But that's my practice.
I am weird like that. I appreciate those practices. Thank you. I love what Diane shared here in the chat, and I'd love to talk about that before I hear what Ulrich has to share with us.
Sure.
This is a perfect example of something I like to push on from a specificity standpoint. So the first step is fleshing out your protocols, right? And that's what I want to encourage everyone to do today. Walk away from this to write down the 5, 7, 10 things you need, and then audit them to make sure they're specific. And Diane's example here is perfect, where 2 of them are beautifully specific and then 1 of them is less so, right? So the 1 hour to practice flute at 5 p.m., fantastic. Checking social media 3 to 4 times a week. I'll contrast that with what she could have said, which is practice flute sometimes, or check social media sporadically, right? The quiet time, again, is more amorphous, but the whole idea of being specific here is not to give yourself more burdens or rules that you're going to feel bad about not abiding to, but it is to be able to say, here's what I know I need, so that when you can come back to this, when you feel like you're out of your flow, you can check in to say, oh, yeah, this is what I need to tweak. Here's what I need to make room for in my schedule. Or, hey, I do have some quiet time right now. Why do I still feel off? Well, I'm only doing it for 10 minutes, and I realize I probably actually need it for a half hour, given everything that's going on, right? So, Ulrich's example is perfect here of, again, the quiet time, how much and when, running in the morning, right? For how long? And then the
45.
There you go, right? Yeah. So you have them in your mind. It's just putting the paper on this for yourself, because it can help you come back to it in that way. So, wonderful.
Sunil, I'm sorry, the interesting thing about the list that I put down was that what I realized, and you and I have spoken about this, is that in a normal world where we're not social distancing, where we get up every day and take a shower, we exercise, we take the subway, we go to work, we have lunch at 12:30.
Yeah.
There are time tickers through the entire day that may give you the sense of control.
Yeah.
And so when you're home, and for me, I've worked at home a significant portion of my career because of the international nature of it. It's always been virtual. But because you can't get out, what I found is that I know in the morning I need the time to meditate and collect my thoughts. During the day, it's, somebody had joked on social media that there's now 3 days of the week. There's yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So you're now sitting here going, okay, where's my routine? And you feel completely out of control because you don't understand the quarantine. You don't understand what's going on with your career. You don't know what the future looks like. So you set up certain protocols, and the specificity of, I play the flute 1 hour every day at 5 o'clock, is something that I wanted to get back in the habit of doing anyway. But what it does is it breaks my work day to my home day, and I literally at 5 o'clock, I stop working, I pick up the flute, it's in my calendar, that's blocked out, nobody can use it, pick it up, practice for an hour. And then when I'm done, I'm like, go downstairs and say, okay, what are we doing for dinner? And that's my commute. I commute through playing the flute for an hour. So doing things like this actually have a tendency to help you feel like you have more control over yourself and your inner peace when the external world is not giving it to you.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, right? And so that's why the protocols are especially important right now as we navigate this time and we prepare ourselves to be dealing with more change from a career and professional standpoint. And it is to figure out how to best manage your day. And it can be the hobby, it can be the thing for your peace of mind, it can be the thing for your body, right? All these things are interrelated. So I really appreciate these examples. I want to also just encourage, I know we've got some folks on the call here from an attendee standpoint beyond the panelists. Anyone who has something to share and chat, I think you guys can raise your hand, so put something in the chat or ask a question if anyone wants to share anything in real time or have a question on this broader area of managing the self and protocols before we move on to the next module.
I'm not seeing.
No problem.
I'm not seeing anybody raise their hand. So
yeah, if anything comes up, we can
perhaps they may not be able to figure that out, but we'll see.
We can come back to it. If anything comes up for folks. The next area we talk about beyond managing self is communication, and something that I'm really keen on working with my clients right now is this idea of over communicating. And this is just a principle in life. When in doubt, personally, professionally, whatever might be in your mind, default to over communicating. So when we're thinking about, again, navigating the change that's going to come professionally and from a global macro standpoint for all of us, the over communication is critical to help us be grounded and calm and understanding and figuring out all of our individual paths forward. When I think about this, there are 4 dimensions that come to mind that I want to share with you guys to think about, and again, have a bit of an exercise or takeaway to start brainstorming on what we might all individually do. The first 2 are in the realm of the strict professional, the work setup. So it's over communicating on work deliverables and projects. Right, the idea of, okay, coming off of a Zoom call with your colleagues, a team meeting virtually on the phone, email chain, just making sure you're crystal clear on when something's expected, when you expect something, what the parameters are, in a way that is not always easy to do right now because I can't walk over to someone's office or catch them for a quick coffee chat. So the very basic work deliverable and project standpoint, over communicating on that front. The next one is appreciating that everyone's job has changed significantly over the last couple months. If you're fortunate to still have your job, which we know that many of our fellow citizens in this country do not right now, right? Your job is more resource constrained, has an added level of responsibilities. You're doing things you didn't have to do before, and it can be disorienting and challenging to figure out and manage with everything. And the over communication comes from clarifying that as well, right? So talking to your team or your peer or your boss around, hey, this is what the expectation is, or asking, hey, how long should I expect to do this, or when can we check in on it if there's an unclear point around that, so you can at least time box for this period of time, I need to be doing XYZ more than I wasn't doing before. And again, from a leadership perspective, this is wonderful for you to share with the people who report to you. But from a managing up perspective, if it's not coming I want to highlight to people that your hands aren't tied, right? You can manage up to the person you report to say, happy to take things on while we're resource constrained and we're all scrambling, just so I can manage my own flows. Is this a permanent thing? Is this, something we should check in on a monthly basis to see where it goes or when it goes away, so that you can be clear on what that is. And it isn't just wow, my job morphed into something that I'm not sure I'm comfortable with, or I like, or I want to do anymore. And you wake up in 1, 2, 3, 4 months with a very different idea about what you're doing and who you're working for.
So good. Can I make a comment on that quickly?
Please.
Yeah, not just what I've noticed is not only jobs that are changing, but also applying for jobs. And specifically in a country like Japan, very structured, especially new graduates. They apply in a certain month, March, and in March and April is the busiest month, and then they do all the applications. And LinkedIn and other virtual sources are not really the way they do it. It's all coming to the universities and then applying in very old school mandatory ways. But I had some conversations with some law students who are applying for jobs now, and they're starting to look at LinkedIn for the first time, don't even know what it is, but they on it, and they're getting job interviews through LinkedIn with international companies. And so job applications and applying for jobs has now changed for them drastically, which is a big thing for a country like Japan, who like to keep things the same for many, many, many years because it works. So this is interesting. Just a comment on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So it's in the adapting to change from a different way you're going to communicate, right? You're communicating with someone on LinkedIn for the first time versus that warm intro or that informational interview, right? And being prepared from that standpoint. So in the professional realm, there's for the existing job, the deliverables of projects, clarifying the new responsibilities, but yeah, for the transition, or for you coming out of law school or getting to the point where you're thinking about going to the next thing, also thinking about the over communication in the process. Hey, I know the world has changed. I know this may not be a typical associate role or typical partner path anymore. Tell me how you guys are thinking about that, right? Share with me the thought process.
Yeah, and Sunil, here's a question. Because I think that the law students who are graduating and looking for positions, or people who are transitioning, or people who find themselves in the position where all of a sudden they're being required to do a lot of admin work, and when they try to communicate clearly with their superiors, they get a bit of a feeling of being dismissed. Can we touch upon the concept of the doomsday feeling that suppresses you down when you hear about the pandemic, the economy, job loss, how things are going to change, and the fact that you feel like you have to do whatever it is you're being told to do right now just to hold on to your job, because you might not be able to get another one out there. And it's a self-defeating thing. So can we? Yeah. I don't know if you're going to get into that, but it's no,
absolutely right. So I'll take this right back to where we started, which is managing the self. Right? Why do you have those mental protocols in place? To stay grounded, to not catastrophize or think about the end of the world as we know it, right? To stay in as good of a flow as you can. So that's where you want to start. But then bringing it to the very real functional, I've been in the same organizations as you all have, and hey, okay, Sunil, I get this in theory, but how am I supposed to tell my partner I'm not doing this thing right now, given what's going on out there and 30 million people who've applied for unemployment, right? No way. And what I say to that is, yes, I totally get it. And you should absolutely be smart around when you bring this up or how you bring this up or what's going on at your firm, right? Use that EQ, use that organizational understanding of probably not the best time. But maybe in a month or two when things have settled down a bit and you're finding that these new set of responsibilities have just been normalized into your workflow, you bring it up then, right? So some of this stuff may not be as relevant right now to think about, given that things are less uncertain and scary than they were 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, but we are far from out of the woods in any way, shape, or form, in any country in this world. So
I would add, I think at another point, having a presentation on the emotional intelligence factor. It was something that I noticed in my role managing culture initiatives for our firm. really important, not just for you think about the associate dynamic as they talk to partners or supervisors that they're working with, but even just for partners and those in positions of authority, especially right now, to have a level of emotional intelligence that plays into how you are communicating and over communicating.
Yeah, and I'll take the question from both angles, right? So many people on this call here are leaders managing groups of people. From that standpoint, from a communication perspective, try to the extent you can to be thoughtful around helping someone understand, hey, here's what we need to have done right now. Here's what we need you to do. Don't anticipate this being a forever thing, but honestly, I don't know how long. Let's check in on this in a month. Let's talk about it on June 1st, right? Just to help someone put it out of their mind to say, how long is this going to go on for? What does this look like? Because most rational, reasonable people will say, fortunate to have the job I do. I get that I got to do some stuff right now that I don't usually do, that I don't particularly like, but that's part of the deal. And I'm happy to do that. And we can revisit when there's maybe some more clarity. From the standpoint of being on the other end and not having the clarity and not being able to dictate it, this is where, again, you can tell yourself if you're not comfortable broaching the conversation right now for a lot of justifiable reasons that I would agree with, say, okay, I'm going to check in on this in 2 weeks or in a month. I'm going to literally set a reminder in my calendar for myself to say, consider talking to boss about expanded set of responsibilities on June 1, right? And then when it comes up, when it's that cognitive load that you're carrying, you can say, oh, no, I already scheduled some time to think about that this month. I'm not going to think about it right now because I can't change it. I'm not going to change it. And I'm not going to do the mental gymnastics to figure out how, when, should I call them on the phone? Should I do it on Zoom? Should I write the email? No, checking on it then, right? So even just that step to say, I'm putting a point to check in on it can help alleviate the cognitive burden in the short term.
Yeah, and Sunil, I'd ask the question that you're touching on right now, is that if you are in a position where your superior, whoever it is that's asking or mandating that you take on different duties than you think you should be or you normally had done in the past, that I think it's important to consider internally for yourself what your level of comfort is. Because if you're not comfortable saying to them now, well, no problem doing it, I'll do it for a month, let's touch base in a month. Some people have no problem with that. Some people, the idea of doing that would completely freak them out.
Yeah.
But the one thing I'd ask you to comment on is the fact that you have to set some kind of goal for yourself at some kind of a time frame, because if you allow it to continue to roll and continue to roll and continue to roll, number one, I think you're given permission to be treated that way and to have that expected of you.
Yeah.
And number two, you're actually changing your own brain chemistry of beginning to do something else, a different form of task that your brain begins to learn how to do when it's not necessarily something you want to do. Sure. So I guess where I'm trying to go is, what do you do if you're that person who doesn't know how to have the discussion? How do you set the timeline for yourself, and how do you propel yourself, even if it's just internally, to draw a line of saying, this is enough, I need to make this change before you go down the deep end?
So there's two things in there of how do we establish a deadline for self, the line in the sand time, and then what do we do if we don't know how to broach it or have the conversation? I know I want to, I know I need to, but I don't know how. On the first, ordinarily I would be in complete agreement around, don't let this just roll over, month to month and keep pushing it off. This is a unique situation where I want to give everyone, from a little bit of slack and kindness, a self point. We don't know. Like there's just too much out there that's uncertain right now to say, hey, I'm setting a hard deadline by June 1. By June 15th, I have to have this clarity. This is such an unprecedented mix of public health and economic health and geopolitical issues that it's just not realistic in my mind to set that deadline. Now, if it's so egregious that I can't stand to do this, or obviously I feel like I'm being mistreated or bullied and do something, that's a different story. But I think most of what we're talking about is in that, wow, I have to do a lot more admin stuff than I did before. Or, you know, I have less support on X, Y, and Z, or I have to stretch myself into this area. And that's where I'd say for now, you know, set the time markers knowing that you might check in on June 1st and say, oh, I'm not comfortable yet because it's still uncertain, and roll that forward. Appreciating that there's a slippery slope, because if you're not inclined to have the conversation to begin with, you can certainly find reasons to keep, you know, pushing it off. That's how I think about the timing. As for if I'm not ready to, or if I'm not comfortable having it, that's something where I would encourage you to think about a mentor, a colleague, a friend you can talk to about it to get some perspectives on it, right? It's if you have the ability to work with someone in a professional context around it, that's ideal. But, you know, if not, for a variety of reasons that people may not have access to that, I would, you know, encourage people to reach out from there. So
this, I think, applies when you're putting together PowerPoint presentations with co-panelists, right? I mean, just timing and expectations and what you're comfortable with.
Absolutely.
A little joke. I want to be sensitive to our time, because I know you've got one more point that you want to take us through.
And I'm not done on the communication standpoint, so I want to just round up with 2 more points there before I talk to the last point. The last 2 points of communication are especially important to me on the holistic application side of them, right? And these are personal points of communication around encourage everyone to do 2 things. 1, checking in regularly with questions to just see how people are doing. How are you doing as a human being? Because you're my colleague, my boss, my direct report, but you are also a parent, sibling, son, daughter, community member, caretaker, or whatever else, right? And it's something that, we're all a few months into this, and that we were doing a lot of that at the outset, and then, you know, we maybe stopped doing as much, but it's just as needed as ever before, because things continue to wear on people and get difficult, and things change, right? So this is, again, in a personal perspective as well as a professional perspective. And the last piece of communication that I would encourage folks to think about is, again, in your personal life, but in your work life, sending individual notes of encouragement to each other right now. Hey, that was an awesome presentation you did. I know it wasn't easy to get that thing together on such short notice. You actually ran that virtual meeting really effectively, right? That goes a long way right now. Again, as we're all struggling to figure out what's the path forward, what are things going to look like. So that's the communication bit. I'm going to shorten the interactive piece of this to maybe literally 30 seconds right now for everyone to write down one thing that they're going to communicate more on, or do from a communication standpoint, commitment to self on this, to take away from today. And then we'll wrap up with a short discussion of the last module. There you go, DL. I love that teacher's pet action going on here. I hope the check's in the mail, Diane, from you to DL.
Oh, it's an unpaid position. That's unfortunate.
Well, all the more reason for the check to be in the mail. Love that. Thank you for sharing, both of you. Good. So again, thinking about just the one thing, and build on that from a communication standpoint. I want to close with today this 3rd module of designing the reentry, right? And one of the things I've heard most often from my clients over the last couple of months is some version of, Sunil, if I'm honest with you, part of me doesn't want this period to end, or I don't want to go back to how it was before. I certainly want the public health scare to be over. I don't want to see people losing their lives and dealing with the really difficult health aspects of this. But there's a lot I started doing, or I started realizing, or I changed in this time that I actually really like, and I'd love to hold on to. And that is such a ripe area of exploration, because if you're honest with yourself and you're fortunate to be healthy with the resources and the job and the setup to navigate this time, it's a thought we've all had on some level or on something. Might be a minor thing, but something for sure. For me, the protocol I mentioned before around the news diet is the thing I'm holding on to. Right. So the question for this redesign, or sorry, the design of the new the reentry is, what do you want to pull forward from this time? It's that simple. What do you want to pull forward from this time? And for me, it is that news diet protocol. If I'm honest with you, the news rabbit holes I went down in December or January when this all started were not that healthy or productive. The world wasn't a beautiful, harmonious place at that time either. And when I sat down with my lunch and decided to, peruse Twitter, it wasn't the healthiest thing for me. And I realized the impact it's had on me in a really positive way is something I absolutely want to pull forward, right? Giving myself some more space to do different things for my business, something I want to pull forward, and how I think about structuring my days. So this is the thing, again, to navigate the change, to navigate what's ahead, writing down that thing. Maybe it's, I really don't want to commute for an hour and a half each way anymore. I'm done with that, right? Now, can I flip a switch on that tomorrow? No, right? So some of the things you want to pull forward are maybe not immediately actionable, but it's really important you still capture them to say, this is what I want to work towards, right? This is what I want to think about. So I'll pause there for questions and points of perspective from everyone here.
I'll just add one there that I think is also quite I wouldn't say it's super easy, but maybe easier depending on your situation, is working out a sleep pattern that makes sense for you, which is something that I've had a time to now actually get into, where before it was, I kind of pushed it to the side. And it's difficult when you're dealing over international platforms. In Japan, dealing with New York or wherever, you just sort of, okay, do the meeting, and then you forget about getting proper sleep. So, yeah, that's one that I want to pull through from here.
Such a simple and maybe obvious one, and yet the one most of us overlook, right? To say, wow, 7.5 hours of sleep, 8 hours of sleep really changes my mood and flow in my work product. I need to stop violating that, right? So that's the third point to end on. And as we've done with the first two modules, again, take 30 seconds to think about at least one thing you want to pull forward, right? Ulrich already shared the great point around sleep. I encourage everyone else to take just a few seconds here to say, this is the one thing I'm going to try to pull forward from this time.
Diane, while people are thinking, I just wanted to ask you this, the playing flute. I also play an instrument, and it's difficult sometimes to put that into your schedule, but is this something that you were doing before, or were you just doing it in this time? And I'm sure that's something you'd want to try pull through, but 5 o'clock at the house isn't always possible.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing that's interesting about it. It's the same as going to the gym, losing weight, playing instruments, doing anything that it is you want to do. And it's very easy to go, oh no, I'm too busy. Oh, I have to work late. Oh, I have this conference call. And what I found is over the years, I mean, I've played woodwind instruments since I'm in the 3rd grade, which is, I think, 7 or 8 years old. I played in Carnegie Hall, in high school. So as a musician, I've played in bands and rock bands and learned the bass. But ultimately it was, I want to do this. And then you collect instruments and they're sitting around, you dust them every couple of months.
Yeah.
And we were home and I said, this is ridiculous. I'm never going to have the time to do this unless I make it. And so what happened was, it was like this paradigm shift, that instead of me saying, oh, okay, I'm going to try to get it in an hour today. I'm like, no, I'm not trying to get it in an hour. At 5 o'clock, I play the flute for 1 hour, and everything else revolves around that. So if there's a conference call or a boss calls, or I say, no, I'm sorry, at 5 o'clock, I have an hour conference that every single day I am unavailable. And as opposed to trying to make my own self-interest fit them in between work and other responsibilities, I have decided that there's certain responsibility, certain of my own interests that everything else is going to have to work around. And it's amazing how much easier it gets to maintain that and keep that commitment to yourself when you shift your mind into giving the power to your interests as opposed to your job. So
beautiful.
So brilliant.
And I think there's a lot that as the first 2 weeks of this shelter in place, I think everyone was just kind of getting hit with the shock of everything that's being closed and the news media. I think we've started to acclimate to, to Sunil's point, we've acclimated to just where things are now, especially even with the reopenings on the state side. You see there's still going to be a lot of phased, what's open, what's not, how many people can be in a certain establishment versus can't. And so I think we've started, I appreciate like setting these patterns or these habits, if you will, for us in place now. To Diane's point earlier, it gives us a sense of normalcy to our day that we had with the commute or time at work. But I certainly appreciate the takeaway of like, what should I be looking to hold on to that we have established during this time frame? I can't say that I'll ever play the flute or nearly as well as Diane has already started to. But I do recommend we all do like a rock band session on one of these, because I think Ulrich is on a couple different instruments. So maybe we'll have like a international section jam band at the end, or some virtual jam.
Ulrich, what do you play, Ulrich?
I have a banjo here, but I've also got a guitar and a mandolin. So all of those. Used to play the cello in the orchestra, but focus on more of the folky stuff now.
Okay,
DL, you also play an instrument. I think you into the guitar, aren't you?
Yeah, I secretly play the guitar, but thanks for putting that on broadcast.
Well, I've been playing the Irish flute. So between a mandolin, a banjo, and a guitar, I think we can start an Irish trad band. Sunil, what are you gonna do?
I'm gonna bring the drinks.
Oh, excellent.
Conveniently for the virtual setup, they'll just be for me, but I'll be like, they're definitely spiritually sharing them with you.
Yeah, I want to see
there's kindness in there somewhere.
Can you carry the drinks while you're smoking a cigarette and jogging to the practice?
You know what? This is just where's this going now?
I want to close by just appreciating that I've dropped a lot on everyone today, from different modules and idea of protocols and questions to sit with. I purposely didn't put together slides for this, because there are a lot of slides in all of our lives, and I love sharing on a deeper level with people just in this conversation. But I do want to give folks something to hold on to from this. So I'll share with the group here to share with everyone else on the call. I've got a one-page outline of everything we talked about today, right? The managing self, the communication, the designing your reentry, just so those prompts are there for everyone to sit with and think about and revisit, if that's helpful. And happy to answer any questions. I'll have my contact information in there too. So if you have any follow-up questions around how do you actually do this, or how does this work, more than happy to do that. So you can have that kind of a takeaway from today.
Yeah. And before we go, I just want to give a shout out of thanks to Tiffany Bardwell, who's the section liaison for the international section, and who's amazing and always supportive, and who has teenage twins that are both unbelievably talented and can join the band.
Look at that.
Great.
Let's do it. Well, Sunil, thank you so much, certainly for the presentation today. I think it's been great to just kind of fellowship on the international front, to just see where things are in South Africa, and certainly as Ulrich is getting ready to transition back to Japan, I believe, in the near future. I think these are universal truths that you've really shared today that I hope certainly all of our guests and attendees can appreciate. Ulrich, did you want to say any other comments?
I just think it's great. Again, instead of just having this information and discussing all the things that are going on in the world, what we really, I think, desire is how do we practically process this, and how do we use it to move forward into our jobs, into our space and family and so on. And so it's all about hope. That's what, hope and practically living through this time. So thank you for doing just that. It was amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
My
great
pleasure to be
presentation.
part.
Thank you again, Diane, Sunil. More information will be coming out as to the next Golly What a Day webinar through the South Africa chapter of the New York State Bar Association International Section. So be on the lookout for that. And of course, thank you as well, Tiffany. You keep and make all this run and look seamless. So thank you for your
Thank you so
support.
much.
And with that, everyone, have a great day and stay well.
Take care, everybody.
Next week is
Keep well.
hoodies.
Wait, did we say 50 minutes of meditation makes all the anxiety go away? Was that, or 20, 10, 5 minutes? Somewhere.
Parting shot here. From my practice and research, 20 minutes is I do transcendental meditation, a version of that. It's a Vedic meditation practice. 20 minutes twice a day is my practice. But I think it is in that just ballpark of, if you're going to sit, the 20-minute is where it may have, beyond that, it's some diminishing returns from all the research, but do a minute, do two. Anything is going to be better than nothing for this from a protocol standpoint.
That's great.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Have
care.
a great
Keep
day.
well. Be safe.
Meditate and be kind to yourself.